temple, the world is our church. Heaven's here on earth. If we had faith in humankind and respect for what is earthly, and an unfaltering belief in peace and love and understanding, this could be heaven here on earth. tears too wide to cross. The bad press has another scared me off. The path figure out how to get me some of what you got. I got a red hot heart. If the talking to you is the same, we should be together. Let our passions have another flame. Oh yeah. When I look for you, I almost pass you by. We're so cool and calm, I thought my friends had lied, but I got so much reservedness to make it wild inside. It was there and then that I knew had to give me some of what you got. I got a red hot heart. If the talking to you is the same, we should be together. Let our passions have another flame. Oh yeah. Thought I won your heart when I held your hand in my arms. Thought it was true love, baby, come romancing each other. My gratitude when you ended my life with nothing. Your light and your heat has all been spent, leaving only smoking ashes. Only smoking ashes, baby. I got a red hot heart, and your heart is super but in vain. Say there's fire down below. Say it's only smoking ashes, baby. Crying all the time, talk these things to you, mourning for the past, contemplated years, knowing I was certain you were always right, because if the people go you out of my life, it's only smoking ashes, baby. Hey, baby. Only smoking ashes, baby. I got a red hot heart, and your heart is different than your veins. Say there's fire down below. Say it's only smoking ashes, baby. I was blinded by devotion, my hand waving up for you. So blinded that I thought all your lies were true. Now I know for certain, since you've gone away, it was just a smoking fire. And this is for a place, only smoking ashes, baby. Hey, baby.
Okay, and you're listening to WBAI Radio in Exile, and we're still coming to you live and direct And we just heard from some of our colleagues in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is quiet at the moment. No sense of chaos, but what we have heard is that the government is on high alert. The FBI nationwide is on alert. All airplane traffic in the United States have been shut down. International flights are diverting to Canada. And the only airplane I've heard so far in a long time over New York has been a military jet. Seems that passed by not too long ago. But New York is a bit quiet today. The subways, so most of the subways are back running. Especially the alphabet trains, the number trains are not running. I would imagine that would cover the 1, the 9, the 4, and the 5. Those trains that, for the most part, end either at the World Trade Center or close to it would not be at this moment running. That is something for us to follow up on. But we have Mark Dunson, who is in the streets of Lower Manhattan. We're going to be reporting to us. Mark, bring us up to date as to what's going on now in the streets of Manhattan.
Okay, the last time I spoke with one of the officers, they said that the train service, as far as the A train, anything below Canal Street or that area was out of service, that people would have to walk to 34th Street. Now, I don't know if that's still in effect right now, but they said that from where I happened to be at the time, which was Franklin and West Broadway, they was directing us to walk north about 5 blocks where they had some buses going to Brooklyn. So for anyone who needs to know that information, they can ask the officers, and they most likely have buses in that area where they're sending people across the bridge to Brooklyn.
You know if the Brooklyn Bridge is open?
Yeah. It's open. The Brooklyn Bridge has been open for pedestrians, so people have been walking into Brooklyn that way. Whether or not there's any vehicular traffic at this point, I don't know.
Okay. And Manhattan, how is it in Lower Manhattan? Are there many people in the street, or is it, for the most part, been evacuated?
For the most part, it's been evacuated. There's pockets of people at this point, and whoever is remaining is being directed to walk uptown at this point, away from the site area. So that's it.
Is there still smoldering? Is the ruins of the World Trade Center still smoldering?
Yes, it still goes into cycles. At first, you'll see the light gray and white plume from the steam, and then every now and then the color will change to black and dark gray, which is indicating, at least to me, that another fire is erupting somewhere in that area. The last reports I got was that it's not only the World Trade Center, but some adjacent buildings, such as the Bell Atlantic building, which is caught on fire, and I think they've been trying to keep that under control.
Now, and have you seen any casualties in the street? Have you seen any wounded people in the street?
I've seen some survivors. They were wounded, but they weren't serious wounds at this point. The first 2 survivors that I mentioned earlier, one of the elderly women had banged up her knee when they was going down the stairway, and they got gushes of water going down the stairway with them, and so she lost her footing and fell a couple of flights and hit her knee.
You were at Chambers Street and before. Chambers Street is only a couple of blocks away from the World Trade Center. Are you still in that area? And the reason I'm asking, were you able to see like water or fire in any place other than the World Trade Center?
Oh, no. All I could see at that point, as close as I could get, was just inches ash and dust and dirt, all like snow, all over powdered all over the pavement, and it looked like snow. It was about an inch thick. And
that's what. And now, how far afield in Lower Manhattan is that spread?
Well, it thins out once you get past Duane Street in Manhattan. You still see it, but it's like a thin coating. It's not thick like it is when you're deeper into Church Avenue.
Let me ask you. You said there's still people in the street. Are there still people lining up to get to the approaches to the bridges, or what's the situation?
I don't know. I'm not anywhere near the where the bridges are at this point, so I can only.
And where you are there traffic, regular vehicular traffic? What are the streets like? What are the streets of Manhattan like?
The streets are deserted for the most part, aside from emergency vehicles which are rushing into the scene.
There are no taxi cabs, no cars, no trucks, buses on the street.
There's a few cars that are out there. They're trying to get off of that street as soon as possible. And it's an eerie kind of situation because when I was on Canal Street, I'm used to Canal Street always being jammed up with traffic, but it was almost deserted aside from the emergency vehicles. And there were pedestrians. There was people walking back and forth. There was more traffic there than anywhere else walking across Canal Street. But that was basically about it. I had made an attempt to get in contact with you earlier through DC 1707, but that building was closed down, and from what I understand, just about all of the municipal buildings have been closed down due to the emergency. And all of the businesses, for that matter. There's just one or two pizza joints or photo places where you can buy a disposable camera for about 3 times the cost at this point. A $7 camera costs you about $30. So that's the condition as it stands right now.
Okay, and you do have some sound for us. Let's see if we can hear some of that.
Okay, I apologize for the quality. I queued it up to the point where I was leaving the subway, and I approached several people who was obviously upset because they had members of their family at the World Trade Center, and they didn't know what was going on yet. So I'll play it in the hope that it comes through clearly.
Well, Mark, it's not happening. Okay, all right. I just lost Mark there, and that sound is undistinguishable. So we'll get Mark on to continue to tell us what he's dealing with on the streets of Manhattan. Want to keep him out there because you never know what will develop. And we understand that an American interceptor shot down a jet plane that was heading towards Camp David. So that's probably the plane that crashed. I don't know where. One plane crashed into the Pentagon, one in Pittsburgh, and 3 planes crashed in the World Trade Center. And we're reporting what took those buildings down. There have been rumors of secondary explosions happening on lower floors. None of that I have been able to confirm. Right now, as Mark Dunstan has reported on the scene, from time to time there's steam emanating from what used to be the World Trade Center, and black flashes of smoke, so something is either burning or continue to smolder on the site. And Lower Manhattan is being evacuated. We will continue to keep you informed as to what's going on in New York. And I'm going to take a few seconds off and take a look to see what's going on and to continue to bring you what's happening in New York and in and around the world. I take a look outside to make sure the world is still there. Serious.
you wait for me, and I'll come for you. Although I've traveled far, I always hold a place for you in my heart. If you think of me, if you miss me once in a while, then I'll return to you. I'll return and fill that space in your heart. Remembering your touch, your kiss, your warm embrace, I'll find my way back to you if you'll be waiting. If you dream of me like I dream of you, in a place that's warm and dark, in a place where I can feel the beating of your heart. Your touch, your kiss, your warm embrace, I'll find my way back to you if you'll be waiting. To see your face, your smile, to be with you wherever you are. Remembering your touch, your kiss, your warm embrace, I'll find my way back to you. Please say you'll be waiting. Together again, it would feel so good to be in your arms, where all my journeys end. You can make a promise, if it's one that you can keep, I'd vow to come for you if you wait for me. And say you'll hold a place for me. In your heart, a place for me in your heart, a place for me in your heart. Can we stand aside? Watch the rape of the world. It's the beginning of the end. It's the most heinous of crimes. It's the deadliest of sins. There is speculation all the time. Mother of us all, place of our birth, we all are witness to the rape of the world. You've seen her strip mine. You've heard of bombs exploded underground. You know the sun shines hotter than ever before. Mother of us all, place of our birth, we all are witness to the rape of the world. Some claim to have crowned her queen. Cities of concrete and steel. There is no glory, no honor in what results from the rape of the world. Mother of us all, place of our birth, we all are witness to the rape of the world. She has been she has been dumped on. She has been poisoned and beaten up. We have been witness to the rape of the world. Mother of us all, place of our birth, can we stand aside? Watch the rape of the world. You will hear her cry if you can. Like it is. Baby, I got your number. Oh, and I know that you got mine. You know that I called you. I called you many times. You can call me, baby. You can call me anytime. You got to call me. Give me one reason to steer, and I'll turn right back around. Give me one reason to steer, and I'll turn right back around. But I don't want to leave you lonely. You gotta make me change my mind. I don't want no one to squeeze me. They might take away my life. I don't want no one to squeeze me. They might take away my life. I just want someone to hold me. Oh, and rock me through the night. To the youthful heart can love you, yes, and give you what you need. I said that the youthful heart can love you, oh, and give you what you need. But I'm too old to go chasing you around, wasting my precious energy. Give me one reason to stay here, yes, and I'll turn right back around. Give me one reason to stay here, oh, I'll turn right back around. Said I don't want to leave you lonely. You gotta make me change my mind. Baby, just give me one reason. Oh, give me just one reason why. Baby, just give me one reason. Oh, give me just one reason why I should stay. Said I told you that I love you, and there ain't no more to say.
Florida, when the first attack occurred this morning, Air Force One has now landed at Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha, Nebraska, and the President is in a secure location. He is in continuous communication with the Vice President and key members of his cabinet and national security team. Vice President Cheney and our National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice are in a secure facility at the White House. I have just come from there. The Secretary of Transportation and other members of our White House senior staff are gathered at a command center there, and we are coordinating with other branches of our federal government. The Secretary of Defense remains at the Pentagon, and the Secretary of State is en route back to Washington from his trip to South America. President Bush is conducting a meeting of the National Security Council as we speak. They are meeting President Bush from his location and other members from different locations in Washington and other locations. As many of you have been reporting, the Federal Aviation Administration ordered all airports closed, and all planes which were in the air were directed to land at the nearest airport. International flights were diverted to alternate locations outside of the United States. Transportation Secretary Mineta has directed the Federal Aviation Administration to suspend operations until at least noon tomorrow. announces that operations will be resumed. Secretary Mineta has also issued orders controlling the movement of all vessels in United States navigable waters. The Federal Emergency Management Agency has activated 8 urban search and rescue task forces in New York.
My very, very deep appreciation to St. Vincent's Hospital for all of the dedicated, and I want to express my appreciation to St. Vincent's Hospital for the people of the city, for all of the work that they've done today and that they're continuing to do to save lives and assist us in this one of the worst days in the history of our country and the history of the city. It was a source of great comfort when I was rushing past here at about 9 o'clock this morning to head down to the Trade Center after the first airplane had hit and before the second, that there were doctors and nurses already out on the street ready to receive what we knew would be wounded and injured people. And they've been operating under tremendous pressure since then. And I want to thank you very, very much. It's a great credit to St. Vincent's Hospital, and it's indicative of the kind of health and hospital services that we have in the city of New York. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Thank you. My very best to all your people. Thank you. Well, there are a lot of injured people, police officers, firefighters, and other people. They're stunned, they're shocked, all different degrees of injury. We know we've lost already. I don't know the number yet. And the only thing, yes, there's been a morgue set up on the west side. It was set up about 2.5 hours ago.
What did you say?
In the 50s, on the west side, near the piers.
What did you say to them?
I told them how sorry I felt and thanked the police officers and the firefighters. One of the firefighters was trapped in a building for over an hour, and he and his entire company were able to escape because they were in a void. Even though the building collapsed around them, they were protected by this void that was created. And I was able to relate to it because the building that we were in, 75 Barclay, was hit by debris, and we were trapped in it for about 10 minutes.
And we're told here at St. Vincent that quite a few firefighters and police officers
I spoke to them. That they all know that we've sustained very heavy losses today. We don't know the number yet, and obviously the effort is focused on trying to save as many people as we can. We know there are still people there that are alive and that can be saved, so the entire effort is right now geared toward helping them. And again, I can't say enough about St. Vincent's Hospital. They were right literally in the line of fire, and if it weren't for the way in which they organized, we would have lost even more lives. It's still a tremendous smoke condition. The doctors here said that there's a lot of damage that has been done to people's eyes, and the smoke condition is still horrendous. There are still some buildings that are structurally unsound that could come down, so they have to be very careful so that we don't lose more lives. Well, we know that there were over, I think it was 1,600 people that were evacuated to Liberty State Park in New Jersey. I want to thank the people in New Jersey for helping us. And the number, about 200 critically wounded people that we were able to count as of about a half hour ago that EMS has transported, and it's been over 600 that have been transported to hospitals. So, yes, that was after 45 minutes ago. These numbers are going to change a great deal during the day. It's going to last for a number of days. We told the president that we thought that the whole rescue effort would take a week or so or more. But the main focus right now, obviously, is on saving as many lives as possible. I think it's still possible for us to save a lot of the people that are there. They're not all there. All of our police and firefighters are not there. We have a lot of police and firefighters. Bernie, do you want to explain where the police and firefighters are? No, we don't. We do not. we're not going to put one out until much later, after we get a better sense of the numbers we're talking about. The police appointment is, primary focus is down in southern Manhattan in the rescue effort, but we're tending to our policing needs all over the city. We, as the mayor said earlier, we're getting assistance from the governor and the National Guard. About 200 National Guardsmen about 2 hours, about an hour ago, I guess. There'll be another about 1,500 sometime this evening. They come in to help us, and we're going to continue on the rescue efforts, but policing will go on in the rest of the city as usual. Obviously, we're in a high state of alert. We're looking at other government buildings, securing those buildings, securing other areas in the city. Right now, our primary focus and our efforts are in southern Manhattan.
One more, please.
I don't think anybody. The mayor and I were there this morning. I was there when the second plane hit the building. I was right underneath the building. I don't think anybody would have imagined that one of those airliners would have hit the building like that. Nobody in their right mind would have thought that would happen. So, in this circumstance, it was something we couldn't avoid it. We couldn't have stopped, even if we tried.
Thank you. Thank you.
And
I was outside watching it when the second plane hit, and we were at 75 Barclay Street in an emergency command center when the first building collapsed, and part of that building collapsed on the building that we were in. So the police commissioner, the fire commissioner, the head of emergency management, and I, and a group of people had to with a lot of assistance, extricate ourselves. My thoughts were for us to try to keep focused on the best way to get out of there and to try to figure out how to all get to safety. I have to commend not only the people that I was with, but all of the people of the city. We literally escaped with them from the debris, and they handled themselves with bravery, they handled themselves with dignity, they handled themselves in a way that reduced the loss of life. We didn't have panic, we didn't have people running and hurting other people. The people of New York City really distinguished themselves, and I just want to say this once again. New York City is a lot stronger than this, and we're going to overcome it, and the people of New York City are going to give an example of how you stand up to terrorism. You just don't be afraid, that's all. Thank you.
Mayor and the police commissioner outside St. Vincent's Hospital.
And you heard it. That's the mayor and Giuliani and Police Commissioner Clark giving a press conference in front of St. Vincent Hospital in New York City. And by now, I'd imagine the world has heard it, that a airplane crashed in each of the buildings that comprises the Twin Tower in New York City, and both building has collapsed, with thousands of people injured and perhaps the death toll in the tens of thousands. And that happened this morning shortly after 9 a.m. First plane crashed in the building around 8:45, followed by a second airplane crash into the second building around 9:04 this morning. And since then, both buildings, hour or so later, collapsed. Cause of the collapse is not known yet at this time. But also, a plane crashed into the Pentagon. It's been reported that a plane was on its way to Camp David, and that airline was shot out there. United has reported to have its plane hijacked, and so has American Airlines. There were casualties aboard those airplanes. So we had 4 planes down, one in Pittsburgh, one in at the Pentagon that crashed into the Pentagon, and 2 planes into the World Trade Center. It is suspected that this has been an act of terrorism performed by some unknown group against the United States. Right now, the borders of the United States are closed. United States border, Canada and Mexico, and the interstate highways to Canada are closed, and the border between the United States and Mexico is also closed. All planes today are grounded, and we expected that all flights will be grounded until at least Wednesday afternoon, tomorrow afternoon. Federal buildings in Washington, D.C., and Newark, and in New York has been evacuated, so has the UN, and so has NATO's headquarters in Brussels been vacated. The FBI is investigating the plane hijacking. There's also a U.S. naval carrier at this time heading towards New York, and George Bush is sequestered in a bunker far away from the east coast of the United States. Condoleezza Rice and the vice president is bunkered in the White House in Washington, D.C., and we understand that all federal offices in Washington, D.C. are closed, and it is quiet at this moment in Washington, D.C. Must reconfirmed. What was there this morning is no longer there. What were at one time the tallest buildings in the world and some of the most magnificent structure is no longer there. The New York landscape in one fell swoop in some 20 minutes has been unexpectedly altered with first the collapse of one building and then the collapse of the second building that comprised the 7 or 8 building complex that comprises the World Trade Center. Many buildings in the area has been damaged, and thousands of people have been evacuated from the area. We are hearing that 20% of the injured people are in critical conditions in New York area hospitals. People have been evacuated to New Jersey, and right now public transportation, the subways are back running. I would imagine that they would not be running down to what used to be the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center, what's left of it, of the Twin Towers, is still smoldering right now. There's still plumes of black smoke bellowing from those buildings and wafting across downtown Brooklyn. Yasser Arafat has condemned the attack, and we've heard that the Taliban has also sent their condolences to the United States. However, there's talk in the air that this action must be avenged, that there would expect some swift retaliation by the United States government on targets, guilty or innocent, but target nonetheless, that the United States government deemed to be responsible for this attack on the icons of the United States building. It's been reported that American Airlines Flight 77 is the plane that crashed into the Pentagon. And I'm sorry, when the phone rings these days, I can't ignore it. So a little Tracy Chapman, and I'll get to that telephone, and I'll be back in a minute.
If you wait for me, and I'll come for you. Although I've traveled far, I always hold a place for you in my heart.
And we're back with you, and we're getting a guest to come on to talk to us. The stock markets are closed. All United States planes are currently grounded. International flights have been diverted to Canada, and the only planes that are flying overhead right now are from time to time you hear a military jet goes by. I don't know if news copters or things like that are running, but it's all quiet right now in New York. Earlier, thousands of people streamed across the Brooklyn Bridge, and we had Joyce Jones on the scene who brought that live to us. Yes. Yes, we are. and we're getting ready to go on the air with a guest. And Ryme, could you care to introduce the guest for us, please?
Sorry? This is Asad Abu Khalid, a political science professor from California State University.
Stanislav, the name of the campus. So, California State University, Stanislav.
We are on live.
Okay.
Yes.
First of all, with the collapse of these buildings and this simultaneously attack, the first word to come to mind is Osama bin Laden by the American media. What have you heard has happened, and what is your impression of this incident?
Well, I think it's very important at this stage that we do not rush to uninformed speculation, and all what the media is based on at this stage is speculation. Sure, when one sees these horrific images and the symbolic nature of the attack against the World Trade Center bombing, it brings into memory the earlier attack of 1993, as if there was an intent to finish a job that was not completed the first time. So this is not to say that some of the speculation may not be reasonable or deserved at this point, but I think it's just irresponsible at this stage to speculate on the responsibility. And if the highly funded and armed arm of the American government at this point doesn't know for sure, how could anybody else know? Except those who did it, of course.
Does this have any hallmark that this was a hit on American targets by Islamic fundamentalists, by Palestinians who have suffered for years under the direct attack of the United States-sponsored military terrorism directed at them through the Israelis?
Well, again, to answer you is required to rehash the first answer. I can add, however, that many Americans do not know to what extent their government is involved worldwide. I mean, there are scenes of violence occurring every day that most Americans don't know about. How many Americans know that the United States, for example, has been bombing Iraq almost every day in the last week or so? How many Americans know that fighter jets sold and paid for by Americans have been used to bomb civilian Palestinians in the occupied territories? Not only they don't know, but the officials of the American government, like Secretary of Defense and the Vice President, have supported the Israelis who fight against Palestinians. This is only to say the following, that those who say that this was a declaration of war ignore that war has already been going on between America and its enemies in many places around the world.
Regardless of who is responsible for what has happened, what do you think the repercussion on the Arab state and Arabs in the world in general is going to be from the United States, either officially or unofficially?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure it's going to be in any way towards the expansion of civil rights and liberties for Americans in general. I mean, of course, it is true that Arabs, more than anybody else, would be regarded with more suspicions as usual, because unlike any other group, we are seen as responsible for the deeds and words of any Arab anywhere in the world. And most importantly, Arabs who live in this country know that many of the people who live and work in those buildings in New York, many of them are also Arabs. So these acts cannot in any way engender sympathy of people who live in America, because they know it is multiracial, city, place like New York City. In addition to that, I think there are some people who are in no way reluctant to expound some fascist cause at this point. I heard early this morning Tom Brokaw, for example, a widely respected journalist, undeservedly in my opinion, saying that it is time that we revisit the freedoms we have in this country, quote unquote. I mean, this is an absolutely irresponsible statement. I mean, what is implied by that? That the Constitution should be suspended? I mean, let's face it. I mean, to a large extent, these events could be used in order to curtail freedoms and liberties and suspend constitutional rights of American citizens in general. And to a large extent, what we see this day, I mean, the military, to a large extent, is running this country today. I mean, how many Americans really believe that the elected president, controversially elected president of the United States, is really in charge of the government at this point? But some people say, but these are emergency situations. Well, I mean, we have to wait and see the extent to which the Constitution is going to be upheld in those emergency times.
Professor, let me ask you this. Surely you're not suggesting that somehow this could have been a plot by the CIA or the United States military in order to
no, of course not.
our freedom?
My point is not. My point is that people will use this opportunity and the fight against violence of this kind in order to expand the powers of the military and the law enforcement in this country. I'm saying that just as Bill Clinton, under the guise of fighting terrorism, rammed down the throats of the citizens of this country, a horrific anti-terrorism bill that really curtailed the civil liberties of all Americans, I see an opportunity today because of the horror of what we see, an attempt to limit the liberties of individuals under the guise of fighting terrorism.
Absolutely. I think that is quite visible. But one of the things that I want to visit with you is the fact that people who live overseas has no liberties, and whether you're living in the Sudan or whether you're living in Palestine or Iraq or any other place in the world for that matter, Yugoslavia, wherever, United States bombs and missiles can rain down on you at any time, and it can happen with impunity and without any remorse or any target. It could be even Scud, missiles, cruise missiles launched from thousands of miles ashore. Can you foresee the indiscriminate bombing of Arab cities and towns and villages across this world because of this most egregious act? The falling of the World Trade Center is a mighty powerful symbol. Never mind the thousands of lives that have been possibly lost.
Well, it's already taking place. Palestinians are being shot like pigeons on a daily basis. All sorts of heavy weaponry is being used against a largely unarmed population. And the bombing of Iraq continues unabated, almost on a daily basis, on average once every 2 days. And of course, this will result, unfortunately, in another act of missiles hitting targets like the famous medicine factory in the Sudan. And what people in America should note is that just as we saw the tragedy of innocent civilians being killed today, they should also know that America has also been responsible for the killing of innocent civilians in various places around the world. This is not to justify one act or the other, but it's to suggest to uphold human rights, one has to uphold it universally. One has to stand up for the rights of every civilian anywhere around the world, regardless of nationality, race, or ethnicity.
America abhor an unfair fight. And many people would say when the United States fights, it fights fair, it has right and justice on its side, not just might. What I feel today in seeing the collapse of the World Trade Center is that there is no way to guard against attacks like this, except to curtail some of the liberties that people enjoy in this country. Do you agree with that?
Unfortunately, I do see that, and I think the public at large is largely supportive of curtailment of civil liberties and rights of many Americans, all in the name of fighting terrorism. What these individuals who killed these innocent people today in New York do not realize is that the victims of their deeds are not only all these innocent civilians who died, but in many cases civil liberties in this country, because this will create a mood. There's panic in the United States today, and there is sufficient environment for the government and the military and the intelligence apparatus to expand their powers at the expense of the Constitution.
Again, do you see repercussions being visited on the Arab world from this attack on the United States?
Without a doubt. It's a question of where the missiles will go this time. Which medicine factory, which place, will they miss their target as they always do? Which city? The entire Muslim Arab world is an open field for American missiles to land. It has been happening with very little attention from the media in the last 10 years.
Do you believe that the lives of Arab people and Palestinian and Muslim is viewed on the same plane as the life of the European and European American people?
Absolutely not. I mean, this is a country that has been mourning the death of a white blonde princess for the last 40 years. It hasn't stopped crying over that death. While a lot of innocent people, like 800,000 people who died in Rwanda, to the total disregard of the Western world, remain unremembered. And now we know from a variety of reports, unclassified documents, that the American government was notified, was warned about what was going to happen. No, I mean, so the question of racist triple standards are quite well documented.
I have here an email from somebody who says, as a title, a government act to stir patriotic and racist military support with a question mark. And I want to put it up to you, Professor. The person says, I have to say that I'm sorry for the innocent people who have been killed and injured at the World Trade Center. It's a disgrace that so many lives are lost. I'm suspicious. I think it might be possible that this is an incident sparked by the U.S. government for some stupid purpose, like wiping up military and patriotic support for their next fatal and racist military action.
No, that's really like wild, totally unfounded conspiracy theory that should be dismissed out of hand. No government in the world will bomb itself. I mean, look at the bomb against the plane against the Pentagon. I mean, part of their command center has been burnt and destroyed. I mean, no. There is absolutely no reason to say that. But the internet is a very alive world for such conspiracy theories to proliferate. So.
Yes.
Now, Professor, in conditions like these, do you see or any anti-Arab, anti-Muslim hysteria being whipped up in and around where you are?
I mean, or elsewhere in the United States, I can absolutely see that. The climate is there. I will not be surprised if there will come a point where they may take actions against Arab students studying in this country. I have been told by an American friend in Washington, D.C., that there were cases of some harassment or some picking on or sluggish acts against Arab-looking men in New York and Washington, D.C. I don't have that confirmed, so I cannot confirm it on the air or on the internet, but people are nervous.
And Professor, we talked about the value of Arab life and Muslim life compared to the U.S. How about Europe? How about Africa? How about the rest of Asia? How, from a political science perspective, does all of this play, meaning the prejudice of the West towards how their lives are more important versus the rest of the world balancing that, or not?
Well, but let me tell you something. I mean, if as somebody who follows the French, the British, and the German press, I'll tell you this. There is no press as ignorant, as sinister as the American press. The European press is far more intelligent, far better informed, and the European public has a much better idea about what's happening around the world than the American population. And I think this is not the fault of the American population. I mean, I teach American students. I mean, there is a sense of ignorance that is so widespread. The country is so powerful, its economy is so strong in relative to other economies of the world, that they feel that their government can do no wrong. They feel that the United States is an innocent abroad, that those who are angry at the United States are angry because of fanaticism. This is not to say that Osama bin Laden is not a fanatic by my standards or anybody else's standards, but it suggests that there is genuine anger at the United States that can be seen not only in the streets of Ramallah and the West Bank, but even in the streets of Seattle against the World Trade Center, the World Trade Organization, or in the streets of Europe in demonstration against globalization. The United States has to realize that its world supremacy has come at a price, and many of its deeds and words are not popular around the world.
But how has it been able to get away with it in the media? How come the media here is suddenly, in the last 16 years that I've been monitoring it,
right,
is upholding and supporting and almost stepping almost 1 foot ahead of where the United States policy is going? How do you explain that?
Well, I mean, you know how the media has become victim to all these mergers and double mergers. I mean, the times when the media was owned by journalists has long gone. The media are now owned by business people whose only concern is profit. And under the in order to attain more and more profit, they only want to engage in sensational reportage and coverage. In addition to that, attention to the world at large is largely missing. Most of the foreign bureaus of publications by the United States are closed down. The magazine that is ironically or comically titled U.S. World News Report now has one foreign bureau, and it's supposed to be covering the world. The same applies to all these networks. Of course, they all maintain offices in Israel. So there is this very unique, interesting affinity with Israel. So that acts of violence against Israelis receive very first-page coverage attention in the United States, but other victims around the world just don't matter. And that often enrages people in other countries.
Would you say that international law has matured or actually regressed in the last 20 years?
International law has tremendously matured, except when it applies to the United States and its citizens. Let's be very fair. The United States government has been very supportive of the International Criminal Court unless it applies to U.S. citizens. In other words, the United States is very vigorously in favor of International Criminal Court, provided that it excludes the United States and its military. Similarly, the United States is very much vigorously in support for the elimination of landmines around the world, unless they apply to United States landmines around the world. So there is this really ready climate of international law of trying war crimes worldwide, but as long as the United States basically believes that it should have law of its own, a world of its own, things won't apply to it. And yes, it is the most powerful country in the world.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Well, I just want to ask the professor. I know it's speculations, but any sense, any idea of who may have done this, or what was behind it?
My guess would be ignorant and irresponsible, and that's why I should refrain.
Okay, all right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
We were listening to Professor As'ad Abu Khalil, political science professor from California State University. And I'm Ryme Katkhouda here with you, with Errol Maitland, doing a coverage and an analysis and a post-aftermath coverage of the attack on the World Trade Center and also the attack on the Pentagon on this primary election day.
Which has, by the way, in the entire state of New York has been suspended. First we heard that the primary in New York was suspended, and then the governor of the state of New York has suspended the primaries throughout the rest of the state. So no election results will be forthcoming today. The only counts that we'll be getting, unfortunately, will be the count of the number of dead and injured in the obliteration of the World Trade Center from the landscape of New York City. And it is still a sight to behold, Ryme. You witnessed the collapse of the building this morning. Could you relive that for us?
It was like being in Beirut again. I was looking at the skyline and there was smoke, huge amounts of smoke and big flames, like it used to be when Beirut used to be bombed under the Israelis. And suddenly the building collapsed. It was not outside, it was like inside explosion, but not like a vacuum bomb, because I've seen these too. They suck the building in and then you will see smoke. This one was just a crumbling, the first building, like a card's castle. The second building was vacillating, and we saw it, and there was much and much more fumes. In the beginning, the fumes were very dark, very black, and later they started being clearer, as if it was steam. And some people speculated that either this means that the utilities, hot water pipes, exploded, or that they were actually sending water on the fire, and that's what we were seeing. A bit later, 15 minutes later to be exact, more or less, the second building collapsed, but this one had the top floors just fall in, as opposed to the whole building crumbling like the first one. And in the place where for many, many years, whenever I went up to the roof, I could see the Twin Tower, there was nothing but smoke. It was the most eerie scene I've seen since I've left Lebanon after 1982 during the Israeli invasion. What I saw also on the street were a lot of people, this is much later I'm talking, that had made their ways from the World Trade Center. They had walked up and they had given me a report that we aired on WBAI a bit earlier about bodies, people jumping from the windows of the World Trade Center, literally just jumping out, realizing probably that they didn't have much chance of survival inside the building, so they took their chance by jumping from 15th floor and up. Or lower, but basically the people who saw them were on the 15th floor. And they were swift and debris of quite a few inches, it seems. Horrible smells. People had to wear masks that were handed to them. But before they were allowed out of their buildings in the surrounding area, they were given, to stay in their buildings for a few hours. Residents that were all the way down to Franklin Street on Church were asked to evacuate their houses. Church Street, I heard later on, was being used mostly as a thoroughfare for aid ambulances, fire trucks, and all of that, so to ease the circulation. A lot of people walked up the West Side Highway and to come near here. And now the mayor was on TV not too long ago giving us a report that the public transportation should have resumed. But for a while, Manhattan was blocked from the rest of the world. And the United States is blocked with the borders in Mexico and Canada stopped. All airline traffic was diverted out of the country, and planes were ordered to stay on the ground, and planes that were on the ground were ordered by the Federal Aviation Association to land as soon as possible. Big buildings similar to the World Trade Center were evacuated in other cities like Chicago and Cleveland and whatever. And we've heard reports through WBAI of what was going on in Washington, D.C. after the Pentagon was hit. I want to point out that it seems that there was a report that floated that a car exploded. It turned out to be incorrect. And a lot of talking heads went on the air in various media, including Tom Brokaw, unfortunately, as we just heard by Professor Assad, speculating as to who can have done it at a time where really we didn't know much. And this one was a reminder of Oklahoma. So this is what's been going on. This is what I saw. This is what I heard. It seems that the smell was pretty horrible. And Arabs across the country are feeling the hatred that is just, skin deep. Xenophobia is strong. Racism is strong. And it explodes at every possibility here in the, shall I say, occupied land of the USA. And we're going to be bringing you in a moment some discussions with other analysts, some people that are terrorist experts, some people that are professors of economy, some people that have been working about trying to make the U.S. policy more responsible, and that have been trying to send information about what's going on in Iraq and in other places. So stay tuned. Back to you, Errol.
All right, Ryme, thank you very much for that update. And do you have yet a copy of Arafat's statement?
No, unfortunately, I just have the two quotes that I had read to you a little earlier.
Do you still have those handy? Maybe you can share those with people who are joining us at this time.
A few minutes, so please bear with me. So it's jumping around on the internet. Just give me a few minutes.
And you're listening to WBAI Radio in Exile. I am coming to you live and direct from New York City. We have Joyce Jones out in the street collecting information. Mark Dunson, who is in Lower Manhattan, who have reported on us. And what he's seen is heading over to one of the hospitals to report on what's going on there. There is a call for blood donation in the New York area, and as a matter of fact, across the country. Somehow they'll get the blood here. That's 1-800-NYBLOOD, 1-800-NYBLOOD. Earlier today, the city of New York and surrounding environment was in what is called a virtual lockdown. The subways had ceased running. Bridges and tunnels were closed all the way out in New Jersey and throughout the area all the bridges were closed. The subway stopped running. The bridges in Lower Manhattan and highways were turned into pedestrian walkway as people flee from the area and subsequently were evacuated from the downtown area of New York City. Right now, the police department is in the process of evacuating Lower Manhattan as they're expecting secondary explosions to occur. However, there has been no indication of any other further explosions in Manhattan or in the area for that matter. What we do have, however, is the remains of the World Trade Center still smoldering. The fire there has not been put out yet. I don't know if they've gotten to all the steams and utilities to shut them off, but the black plume of smoke is still emanating from what used to be the 110-story tall twin towers that stood majestically over the skyline of Lower Manhattan, and you could see them from all vicinities, from all direction in the area as you approach New York. Today, the only building that stands tall in New York is the Empire State Building. Many of the television stations are off the air. I don't know about the radio. I haven't had the opportunity to surf the dials, but most of the television stations in New York went blank this morning, and I guess they're feverishly trying to find alternate means of getting their signal out. And highway traffic into the New York area came to a screeching halt. The procession across the Manhattan Bridge was that of a silent, totally and completely silent, orderly march of people just pouring out of Manhattan, walking into Brooklyn. Some people who had no clue as to where they were just ordered out of Manhattan in a state of shock, in a state of daze, covered with white ashen-like powder, like pumice, in their hair and their faces, and you could tell these were the people who was coming from around the area of the epicenter of the collapse of the World Trade Center. Those buildings, I think, for me, just unexpectedly, it seems, folded like an overweight deck of cards, and they came down. We've seen the images on television being played over and over. But I think nothing will replace, in my mind, Joyce Jones coming in screaming as if she was stung by a hive of bees to say, "It's gone, it's gone, it's gone." And Ryme saying, "It's when," and it is gone. The World Trade Center collapsed today at around 10 a.m. in New York. 2 airplanes, one each in each building, set those buildings afire, and they collapsed. We think that is the cause of their collapse. I guess further reports will tell just exactly what caused those buildings to suffer the fate that they suffered. And the Central Intelligence Agency said the CIA Operations Center has been moved to an undisclosed location in Washington, D.C. The headquartered building in Langley, Virginia, has been evacuated of all essential personnel. The National Security Agency in Fort Meade, Maryland, said that NASA has heightened its security posture and that all non-essential personnel has been sent home. The Pentagon has also evacuated part of the Pentagon, but they say that their war-making mechanism, their war-making apparatus is fully functional. The president, I believe, is out someplace in Nebraska in a bunker. The vice president and Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice, the national security advisor to the president, are sequestered in a bunker at the White House. And most of Washington is now quiet, as if it's an holiday. And we don't know what has happened. And the United States government is reporting that they have no credible claim of responsibility for these attacks on the United States. It's been reported that a plane was headed to Camp David, and that plane was shot out of the sky with the loss of some 77 lives. The passenger aboard seems to have been an American passenger plane that was shot down. And Ryme, have you located that statement from Yasser Arafat? Hello? I guess we'll try to reestablish contact with Ryme.
Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Are you?
Yes.
Yeah. Are you there?
Yes, I am here, and we have with us Kathy Kelly. Kathy Kelly is the coordinator of Voices in the Wilderness, a religious-based group opposing the economic sanctions against Iraq. She and her colleagues have been conducting a fast in front of the U.S. mission to the United Nations. She said today the best security, the best protection doesn't come from frightening other people more than they can frighten us, but by forming human bonds based on just and fair relationships with other people.
And you have Kathy Kelly on the line.
Hello, Kathy.
Hello, Ryme.
Yeah, Kathy, good afternoon. I just want to start out by informing you that it's been reported in the press that I don't know if this seems to be today's story, but it's hard to believe. I don't know if you've heard this. I don't know. Maybe I should look again. Any truth to the rumor that another United States spy plane was shot down by the Iraqis?
I did see that on a roundup of news. I think it was a drone plane.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, I did see that. So the war against Iraq still goes on almost on a daily or weekly basis. The United States government, I guess, in target practice, continues to kill people in Iraq.
Well, I think, many of us who have gone over to Iraq have arrived in families and homes at times immediately after bombings done by the United States. And we've been amazed at how readily Iraqi people have expressed words of forgiveness. And I've been here in New York City very aware that much of the commentary on the terrible tragedy that's befallen so many families here in New York that must be just panicked with anxiety to try to learn what happened to their loved ones or are grief-stricken over learning news that their loved ones have died. I think that there is a bond that they would feel with other people in other parts of the world who have had this similar experience. And Colin Powell said that whoever did this attack must be someone who thinks that by attacking buildings and killing people, you can achieve a political goal, and he said that's never the case. And I think he's right, that's correct, and it's something we must try very, very hard to understand here as well. Because
do you find that's a message that Colin Powell takes to heart? Does he really believe that by attacking positions in Iraq, which he started when he was Secretary of State, when he was what do you call it, the head of the Joint Chief of Staff, that in fact has not achieved the objectives of finding the enemy, isolating the enemy, and destroying the enemy? It seems like he's on a total systematic attack of Iraq, and also if the people suffer, be that as it may. Kathy? Did you hear me?
I did hear you. Thank you. Yeah. I think what we have to hope for is that the tone would be not so much one of retaliation and vengeance in the aftermath of this terrible bombing and attack, but rather that it would be a tone of
breaking the cycles of violence, because warfare is always predicated on hatred and on fear. So I'm hoping that that courage that can overcome fears will be very much common to people in New York and in Washington, D.C., and really throughout the United States.
Sorry, I had to step away for a second. And so, Kathy, you know, we talk about vengeance and retaliation. You have been before the United Nations now, in the United Nations area now for several weeks. Are you there today?
Well, no, our team was asked to leave shortly after the first plane hit the World Trade Center, and the entire United Nations area has been evacuated. We were planning to close out our fast on Friday, the 40th day, and we were going to share a meal of lentils and rice and untreated water because that's symbolic of what's available, and only that to so many Iraqi families. But I would be very doubtful if that plan could continue.
What were the reactions of people, United Nations personnel, and other people in that area as you were there when the first plane struck?
I have to admit that I hadn't left our place where we reside yet. But I think in just a brief exchange with one of the people who were there, he said that he felt that it wouldn't be a very welcome time for that presence to have been maintained any longer.
Mm-hmm. So you, as an American who's trying to bring to bear a little bit of the injustice and the brutality that the American government has, and by extension the American people with their tax dollars have been inflicted, and their support have been inflicted on other people abroad, now feels that you yourself and your group may be targeted as sympathizers to the enemies of the United States?
No, I'm not concerned about that, to be honest. I think that in our time in New York, we were very, very recognizable as a group of well-intended pacifists. I think people would not see us as people who had any sympathies with anyone who ever tries to develop or store or use or sell a weapon. And yet, I think in the immediate aftermath of an event that's as tragic as this one here today, it's hard to expect that people are going to be reflective. I think that it's often the case that people will react, and they'll react with fear and anxiety. But that makes it all the more incumbent on people who have long held a vision of another way of living where we don't use weapons and we don't use violence, to try and understand what it is that makes people hate each other so much, and then certainly to try to break those cycles. So we feel that our presence is important in terms of still calling on the United Nations to recognize that for the past decade, the rights of Iraqi children have not only been ignored, they haven't even had the right to live in the case of over 500,000 children. But we certainly want to be sensitive to the context in which we stand right now.
If you had a chance to talk to Colin Powell, or even George Bush, who I'm sure right now are busy planning retribution, what would you say to them?
I would ask him just to say over again exactly what he said on national TV to the U.S. public. He said that the barbaric act today was committed by somebody who believed that by destroying buildings and attacking people, you can achieve a political goal. And certainly to say that in his prayer and his longing, which I'm sure is happening in his life right now, sure, let us long for a way to pray equally for those who died, for those who committed the death, and for those who want to use more death in response.
Kathy Kelly, your work on behalf of Voices in the Wilderness, certainly I will continue. I guess you will be taking, as you say, taking a break and going back to Illinois. What is your future plans, if you have made them yet, and can people reach you if they want to join you and your group in the sentiments that you have to share with all peoples of the world at this time.
Thank you. In 28 cities across the country right now, there are life under siege encampments that have been planned in solidarity with the end of our fast. And what's happened is that in community groups and faith-based groups and campuses, people have moved into tents and makeshift dwellings, and they're planning to be there for 3 days and cut themselves off from cell phones, computers, electricity, refrigeration, cars, public transport, as a way to just try to understand for 3 days what a life under siege has meant for 11 years in Iraq, or increasingly means for people in Palestine. And we do think this kind of understanding is crucial for us to better understand the world around us, even as we look at the terrible rage and vengeance that was wreaked upon the United States today. So I'm wishing the very best for each of those life under siege encampments, and we've encouraged people to hold a candlelight vigil and to be in quiet and have silent remorse for the death that's been caused today. Beyond that, we are looking toward January 15th, Martin Luther King Day. That's a day when I think we could celebrate the sanity of a leader who had a vision for people to live together fairly and in just relations together. And we're asking people to consider marking their calendar to come to New York, to be with us for a teach-in on the 14th of January, and then to gather together for an action, again, at the U.S. mission to the UN. So if people could mark their calendars for January 14th, 15th. And it seems right now like a question which is very subordinate, really, to the massive and overwhelming events of today. But we do know that the smart sanctions continue to operate in the halls of the UN and the U.S. mission to the UN. So we're also asking people to do all that they can to prevent economic warfare from being waged through reliance on smart sanctions.
Do you think that this, I know Colin is not going to take your advice, but you think voices could cry out that you can't, you even though you're a mighty nation, in the parable of David and Goliath, that the Goliaths of the world may not be able to defend themselves against the slingshot hurlers. That plane going into the World Trade Center wasn't a missile. It wasn't even a bomb. It was an airplane going in that building. It was a stone, a slingshot at the building. But like Goliath, it came down. Is this a message to Goliath that perhaps you need to sit down and begin to fashion a world where justice and equity reigns as opposed to military might?
Well, I think it's a hideous delivery of the message. I in no way would I ever want to suggest that anything that I've ever experienced in Iraq, when I've met with mothers who weep for their dying children, would justify a terrorist act. In fact, I think of the mothers who've said to me, when I've asked them, is there anything that you want to say, they've said, I pray that this will never happen to mothers in the United States.
Well, that brings me to the question that I want to put to you and to Ryme. This is the question that active brutality, active belligerence against small states or people, does the continued bombardment of those people, does it harden them? Does it make them want to fight more, or does it pacify them? Ryme, from your experience, have you seen pacification in war? And you, Kathy Kelly, from your travels to Iraq and the bombing that people have endured day after day, week after week, for the past, 10 years, have that softened up the people, or has that just strengthened their resolve to continue to fight and to defend themselves?
And their resolve. People also that have been bombarded are in a state of war and they've lost everything. And every so often, and they are very aware of how it is international economics, how it is a new face of imperialism that is making their place, their loved one, their children die in these fashions, in these horrific fashions, because it's a very slow death, the death of the people in Iraq under siege. And definitely this strengthens their resolve and their hatred of the U.S. government. It doesn't necessarily permeate to hating of the people, and we see that when often people go there, if they go there in peace, they are received well. But definitely officials are hated, and the whole official government and its figure and its symbols are hated because they are held responsible of everything happening.
And Kathy?
Well, I can only respond from the experiences I've had with individual families or individuals who've befriended us. I have repeatedly heard that people believe that the United States people would never do this to them. I know a person whose child, his little girl, was born during the Desert Fox bombing. And do you know what he named her? He named her Hofran, which means forgiveness. There's no such thing as the Iraqi people. There are 1,000 passions and wills at work in any country, and we can never talk about what the people think, because that's really a bit undermining the variety of ideas that are happening in any nation.
Well, I'm sure tomorrow we will see, if not today, certainly people in the name of the American people and the will of the American people will be deciding what action that they will be carrying out against known or unknown individuals who are purported to be responsible for this act. And Kathy Kelly, I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon here on WBAI Radio in Exile, reporting live and direct from New York City on the great calamity that has befallen New York and those people who inhabited the World Trade Center that are no more, no longer standing. So once again, thank you, Kathy Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ryme, thank you. And I have located a statement that came from Islamabad, Pakistan. And this is from the ambassador to Pakistan from the Taliban, who said he wanted to tell the American children that Afghanistan feel your pain. We hope the courts find justice. And this is what he has to say. And today, and it's been reported in the media that this is not a sincere feeling being expressed by the Taliban and those people who are now ruling Afghanistan. We have also have a statement from Yasser Arafat condemning...
While you're reading that, I'm going to locate Professor Dumas, Professor of Political Economy at the University of Texas in Dallas, for him to speak with us. He's the author of Lethal Arrogance, Human Fallibility, and Dangerous Technologies.
Okay, and I'll leave the line open, so when you have the professor, just feel free to interrupt. Okay? Okay, and you're listening to WBAI Radio in Exile. And President Bush has called the attack a terrorist attack. And he's saying it's a working assumption is that the attack in New York and Washington are acts of overseas terrorism. And the government of the United States cannot rule out additional attacks happening. And so we will see what's going to happen in a government of the United States, which is now angry. And what we understand is that there is a U.S. Navy carrier group that is on its way to New York I would imagine that the FBI and the CIA and other agencies are right now combing the world and looking for leads and carrying out full-scale investigation, as well as the FBI is investigating the numerous plane hijacking that have taken place over the United States today. And several of those airplanes who crashed into targets or, in one case, was shot down by a U.S. interceptor force as that plane was purported to be heading to the Washington area to Camp David, the weekend retreat of the President of the United States. President Bush at the time was not in the Washington, D.C. area, but he was in the state of Florida. And
we have with us Professor Dumas, Professor of Political Economy and Economics at the University of Texas at Dallas, and also the author of Lethal Arrogance, Human Fallibility and Dangerous Technologies. Professor Dumas, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
You have a lot of experience and about human fallibility analysis and dangerous technologies. How would you highlight what went on today?
Well, I would say that the attacks that occurred on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon and such were clearly well coordinated, but they actually did not require a great deal of sophistication or a great deal of support. It was not necessarily involved a large number of people or any very sophisticated technology. I'm not saying that that was not involved, but that there is no reason why that needed to have been involved. What happened was the attacks were such that it was not required to use any, let's say, sophisticated explosives techniques or explosives knowledge. The explosives used were just the fuel in the planes. It was not necessary to use any very fancy coordination techniques. This wasn't an incident where you had one group having to, let's say, get the plans for a building to find out exactly how a bomb should be placed so as to cause maximum damage. That I don't know the extent to which any of that activity took place, but none of it was actually necessary for the kind of attack that occurred today. So, in fact, all that was necessary was to have a group of people, each of which sent to a different airport to get on a different airliner and hijack the plane. And then the one thing that involved a degree of sophistication was that there needed to be at least one person with each group that knew how to fly a plane well enough to direct it into a building. But there's nothing in the nature of this attack that to me says that it required a huge amount of funding or a lot of governmental support or a large number of people with very sophisticated technologies.
How about the economic targets here? Can you go into that and analyze its politics?
Well, the attacks that when terrorists attack facilities, what they're looking for is maximum publicity, and they want to do something that causes media attention to be focused on the event. Terrorism is a sort of perverse form of theater. It's a strange way to look at it, but whereas many criminals and people who commit violence are not so interested in your knowing who they are and what has happened, the terrorists particularly want bright lights shining on what they've done in order to achieve the effect they're trying to achieve, which is to frighten people. But they certainly have caused a lot of economic damage, along with a frightful loss of life in the United States, because the airlines have all been shut down, at least for today, and the stock markets are shut down, and a lot of businesses are not operating fully, and so on. So there will be a considerable economic cost. But I want to highlight something about the human cost. I have not heard any firm figures on the number of people that were killed in the events of today. But the World Trade Center normally has something on the order of 40 to 50,000 people working in the complex. It's a very big complex, very hard to get people in and out quickly. 250 elevators, miles and miles of corridors and staircases and so on. In all of the international terrorist incidents that have occurred from 1968 until 1997, I'm now looking at my book Lethal Arrogance that St. Martin's Press put out. I have a table in which I show that in all of these incidents from 68 through 1997, there were almost 13,000 international terrorist incidents, and a total of 7,619 people were killed in those incidents. It will be a major miracle if at least 10,000 people didn't die today. So this
I
single
wanted to
event
discuss
is...
with you something that you mentioned. When you were describing terrorism, you said that the goal is to frighten. Though you just before had described it as a perverted way of theater.
Yes.
And there is a huge discussion that says often there are no terrorists, just freedom fighters.
Yes.
And that the reason to use the world as a stage is not really to frighten as much as to bring attention to frightening events happening undercover, unreported in either some communities or some areas of the world.
Yes, it certainly is true. I use the name terrorist or the word terrorist to mean someone who kills people who do not themselves have power, are not themselves military forces, in order to create a lot of public attention. It's quite true they do it to bring attention to some event or cause or whatever it might be. But terrorism is defined by the method, not by the goals. There are people who have used terrorist methods who have very clearly defined and in many cases respectable political goals. The means they have used may have been reprehensible, but the goals may not be. There are also groups that have done terrorism who are governments, for instance, can engage in terrorism by my definition. It's not just a feature of subnational groups. So if we are to get away from this idea of calling those people we don't agree with terrorists and those people we do agree with freedom fighters, and focus instead on what terrorism actually means, it means the method that's used, which is intended to shock people so as to get their attention. That's quite true.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Professor. And how about the aftermath of the World Trade Center, the fact that the stock exchange was stopped halted today, the fact that all these businesses had to evacuate? How would you wage the economic cost of that?
Well, it will be in the millions of dollars for today, but the World Trade Center towers themselves are extremely expensive buildings, and I think they might have been chosen as targets of the attack not just because they are large buildings, but because they are, in quotes, the World Trade Center, and this may be a reaction to the United States behaving in an arrogant way in recent past with respect to issues of global economic trade and agreements, and with respect to other political activities around the world. The United States has been throwing its weight around quite a bit in recent times, and if a group who feels very disadvantaged by the activities of the United States wanted to make a point and attack the United States, they certainly would not do it by shooting missiles at the country, as we've heard so much discussion about, but more likely by terrorist attacks of the sort that we've seen today.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor. Errol? And we are on WBAI-X.org, WBAI Radio in Exile, coming to you live and reporting things we've seen and things we've heard, and bringing you live reports also and analysis around the attack on the World Trade Center and the attack on the Pentagon on this primary election day that has been canceled on September 11th. What do you see happening moving forward? What can you project as changes in economy and security that will have political effects as a reaction to what happened today? Could you extrapolate?
Yes, there are two things that worry me the most. The first is that the United States, being very powerful militarily and very angry and frightened about what happened today, may well strike out against some country who they believe, for whatever reason, was involved in the attacks today. I think there's a very great danger that we will do this without knowing clearly and precisely who was responsible and where they can be found. And if we do so, we will simply add to the toll of innocent people who have died as a result of this. That's the last thing we should do. We should be very careful to try to determine who was involved, who actually did this, and to bring them to justice, but not to lash out with bombing attacks against different countries because we can do it and because we're angry and because we're frightened. I also am very concerned. I'm sure there will be increased security at airports and the like as a result of these events of today, but I'm very concerned that Americans do not permit a major compromise of civil liberties. I think we have to closely protect our civil liberties. There will be a lot of pressure to do more investigations and to make protections of our civil liberties more lax in order to be able to try to investigate this. But this would be a terrible, terrible thing to do. You know, in the Second World War, as a result of the attack on Pearl Harbor and the involvement of Japan in the Second World War, the United States government massively violated the civil liberties of Japanese Americans who were living in this country. And only very recently have we even attempted to apologize for what we've done. There is precedent for fear giving rise to a massive violation of civil liberties. That cannot be permitted. We must not allow that to happen.
Professor, this is Errol Maitland here at WBAI Radio in Exile. I just want to ask you, do you see copycat events like this occurring because of what happened today? It has seemed so senselessly easy for somebody to commandeer an airplane and have it flown into any tall edifices or even into buildings like the Pentagon. Do you see more of this happening in the world? It is literally like madness. What comes to mind is Colin Ferguson, rage. Plain, simple, calculated, that is meant to destroy. And no one to this point has come forward to say, we did it and why.
Yes, it's possible that there will be copycat kinds of activities, even on the part of groups that have nothing whatever to do with today's activities, and may try to focus on, to take advantage of all the public attention that's being directed to these kinds of attacks today. And there may be attempts to do something similar elsewhere in the U.S. or elsewhere in the world. My guess is that if other things happen, they're likely to happen in the United States, simply because we are a big, powerful nation. We are the dominant, militarily and economically dominant nation in the world, and we have been behaving in a very antagonistic way, in a very almost isolationist way in recent months. So it's quite possible. I hope, of course, that this doesn't happen. But
do you also see the United States government taking preemptive action? It's been reported, and I fully can't believe this, that one of these airplanes that were shot down was headed for Camp David, and that, in fact, it was intercepted by one of the United States Air Defense Group and shot out the sky. Do you see civilian airplanes straying off course being targeted in the United States over
I hope not. There are all manner of overreactions that could occur. That certainly would be one of them, because there have been many cases of planes whose navigational equipment just failed, or there were flaws in a computer chip somewhere in the plane, and the plane strayed far off course for no particular reason than that the equipment failed. Certainly we can't afford to become paranoid about these sorts of things, or we will do a lot more damage to ourselves. I think it's very likely there'll be more security at airports, although it probably does not require a lot of sophisticated activities to be able to smuggle some kind of weapon on a plane. After all, I heard reports, I don't know whether they're true, that 2 of the flight attendants on these planes that were hijacked today were stabbed. And you can stab someone with something that's not made out of metal and wouldn't be detected by any of the usual devices that could be strapped onto someone. We can't strip search everyone who gets on an airplane. We have to be very careful we don't get crazy here. So I think shooting down planes that stray off course is certainly bound to cause a lot of innocent loss of life.
Earlier you talk about the financial costs of this one day or more hiatus on Wall Street. Do you see acts of just threats on a continuous basis having an effect of shutting down stock markets and causing economic chaos throughout the world?
I don't think so. I don't believe that things will be shut down for very long periods of time. If there's anything shut down for a bit more time than usual, it will be airports. But I don't think federal buildings or Wall Street or any of that will be shut down for very long. In the immediate aftermath of these events, when you don't have a feeling for what else is coming, and you're fearful that there may be other coordinated attacks on the same day, it's reasonable to shut down these facilities, but I don't think they'll be kept shut down for very long. And also, the international financial markets operate through lots of stock markets and bond markets around the world who are interconnected with each other. So I don't think that's likely to be a long-term effect. The more important effects, both economically and politically, have to do with whether people are able to go on with their lives and whether we are able to continue to protect our civil liberties, or whether we give in to pressures to allow the government too much.
Anything that we can do to guarantee that there won't be an erosion of civil liberties and civil and human rights in this country?
The first thing we have to do is any suggestion that things like search warrants should be suspended or something like this should be immediately opposed with everything that we can oppose it, letters to the Congress and writing and speaking on the air and all this sort of thing. You have to be very careful in the aftermath that this doesn't happen. But there will be attempts, it's virtually certain that there will be attempts, since the intelligence community was apparently caught completely barehanded here and had no idea what was coming. They will try to say that in order to do the security they need to do, they will need much more intrusive means, and we just simply have to say no. There may be risks involved, but there are greater risks involved in giving up our liberties.
Okay, Professor, I want to thank you very much for. I want to thank you. Thank you, Professor. I want to thank you, Joyce. I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon here on WBAI Radio in Exile. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's it. I mean, the events of today are horrible. We have to make sure they don't turn into a long-term destructive force in our society. We have to try to understand why this was done and who did it. We have to try to behave in a measured way and not strike out. And certainly we have to be very careful to protect ourselves against undue erosion of our liberties.
Thank you very much. And you're listening to WBAI Radio in Exile. And coming to you live and direct at www.wbix.org. And back from the field is one Joyce Jones, who has been running all over Brooklyn and she's here to tell us what she has learned.
I was out on at the foot of Manhattan Bridge, the Brooklyn side of the Manhattan Bridge, and I collected a lot of sound. If I sound a little, I don't know, strange, or it has to do with the fact that while I was gathering the sound, it was easy, or not easy. It was sort of, I was just doing it. And once I got back here and was able to talk to my sister, who is she lives in Harrisburg, and I understand that that's where one of the explosions occurred. She and her family were actually not there. As a matter of fact, they had just relocated from Harrisburg. A lot of people, a lot of the discussion that happened outside, a lot of people started to express thanks and gratitude for their life and for life and survival of their loved ones, and just expressing their faith. They're sort of, I know people who listen to the WBAI radio or WBAI-in-Exile, it gets sort of like dicey when you start talking about faith and stuff, but or spirituality for that matter. And but people were expressing a lot of that gratitude and affirmation of their faith. Because they were so glad to be alive, and they were so glad that their loved ones were alive, and they were so glad to be in connection with them. Anyway, I guess I should just go immediately to the tape, but I just wanted to say, if I sound strange, it's because I'm still coming down from having been out there.
No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't just go, because I think for people who are tuning in now, getting ready to hear the news, especially when we start early, some people may not know what is going on in New York, believe it or not. And even people in New York may not know what's going on, considering several of the TV channels are down, at least on my television. So, but you were an eyewitness this morning to some of the incidents that happened. About 8:45, we got several phone calls that a plane had crashed into the World Trade Center. First, we were told that it was a small plane, but then not such a small plane. We learned that later on it was a commercial jetliner that was deliberately driven into the building. Then while we were on the roof looking at the building, you witnessed something.
I witnessed an explosion. What was first smoke then became flames. And I suspect, as I was talking to people on the bridge, at the foot of the bridge, it was people had shared that upon the impact of the plane to the second building, the flame started. And
that lasted, just for, at least from your vantage point, for maybe 30 seconds to a minute, if that long.
The flames.
Yes, the flames.
The flames were, they lasted for about 30 seconds, I guess to a minute.
And then it went back to smoldering.
And then it was
what
smoke.
The building was
right,
doing.
Exactly.
But now we had two buildings that were smoldering.
Right.
Then you left the building to come and report.
And then somebody else had mentioned that the buildings had fallen, and I went up, and indeed the building had fallen. I went upstairs and saw that it wasn't there.
What was your feeling? What was your reaction?
I am still coming down from that, because as I've been saying, I've been talking to people. I've been putting, actually I put my experience on the back burner because I was going out to record this sound. And as I mentioned earlier, I was getting ready to say I really didn't start to, sort of connect to how I was feeling until I spoke to my sister, who's she's in Maryland right now, but she lives in Pennsylvania. And when I had heard that there was an attack in Pennsylvania, it was like, I didn't really pay too much attention to it. I was concerned, but I didn't really connect to how I was feeling. And right now I'm feeling very relieved. But I am sort of shell-shocked from having listened to the stories from the Manhattan Bridge. There were many. There was like where one person had a story, there were many others that had a similar story of either looking for their child or waiting for their child or their loved one, or to find out whether whether their husband was still alive or their boyfriend or whatever. There were, of course, many stories of people who were diverted from going one route, and they were diverted from being in Lower Manhattan and were directed to 34th Street and 42nd Street, and only to wind up walking over the Manhattan Bridge. There were situations, well, these were the situations that really started to affect me. And, the fact that there really wasn't anybody there to direct them. People were working on automatic. People were pretty much, they were New Yorkers, and they were like, okay, I live in New York, and I know that if I don't go this way, I can go this way. There wasn't anyone that was actually giving them directions on how to get anywhere. There weren't ambulances. When people were rushing to get to, from Lower Manhattan to go to these places where they were directed to, like 34th Street and 42nd Street, there wasn't an ambulance or something there to attend to them. People were, I saw this one woman who had like an abrasion on her arm. She was okay, but, it was just, no one was there to attend to her. There were several things that were, that were a shock. Even in downtown Brooklyn, upon leaving the bridge, there was, I've been hearing this word. People have been saying it over and over about how surreal it is, and it really is surreal, the feeling. A lot of people have used the description of it being like a Godzilla movie, or they would look at other movies and see how there were attacks on countries, and they just never thought that it would be here, that sort of thing. Even after what happened at the World Trade Center before, there are many theories behind what has happened. A lot of people don't think it was somebody else, there are many things that people are looking at but the first and foremost, most important thing that they're looking at is the fact that their loved ones are well and safe, the ones who are experiencing that. I did see a couple of people who were crying, and I suspected that they had lost a loved one, and I just couldn't find it in myself to go up to them and find out whether they did or not. I just couldn't do that, and that's one of the things I, as a listening person, never particularly cared for about journalists who did that in their time of grief. But anyway, it was, when I was talking to my sister, I found myself crying. I just couldn't, it just hit me at once, what was happening. And it really was incredibly devastating. So let me put on this tape because there's a little background chatter going on right now. Okay. You're listening to www.wbix.org, WBAI Radio in Exile.
The governor, he is putting the National Guard on alert so that they can relieve our police officers and our firefighters later this afternoon. And we've asked the federal government for help from the urban search and rescue team. So right now, we're using all of our police and firefighters and emergency personnel to help the people down there. Later on, we're probably going to need reinforcements.
Mayor Giuliani, I realize that it must be more than a chaotic situation, particularly since the bunker has been compromised and cordoned off. But can you give us any sense? There are so many people watching now who must have loved ones down in that area and are concerned of the systematic...
I've never seen anything like this. I was there for shortly after it happened and saw people jumping out of the World Trade Center. It's a horrible, horrible situation. And all that I can tell them is that every resource that we have is attempting to rescue as many people as possible. And the end result is going to be some horrendous number of lives lost. I don't think we know yet. But right now, we have to just focus on saving as many people as possible.
Can you give us a sense of if there is, in fact, some system being implemented, what that system is, and where people are being taken?
We're triaging. People are being taken to every area hospital possible, even virtually within minutes. I drove down right past St. Vincent's Hospital, and I could see them actually on the street ready to take people, and that was within minutes of the first airplane hitting the World Trade Center. So the hospitals are
Giuliani. We'll let you.
It's in place. They're doing it. We just need the cooperation of people in getting out of there.
We'll let you get back to the operations there, and we do appreciate you taking the time for it.
Excuse me, you're listening to www.wbix.org, WBAI Radio in Exile. And that was Rudolph Giuliani's statement to the press around this morning. It was while we were on our way to the Manhattan Bridge, or shall I say the Brooklyn side of the Manhattan Bridge. The rest is sound that was gathered upon my arrival.
What you see?
Okay. No, I haven't seen anything, but what I have heard, it is really a mess.
But have you seen people coming? There are people now coming back from over the bridge.
Behind the bridge. No, I haven't seen none so far. I haven't seen none so far, but a couple come with, I would say, like debris all over them, you know.
Oh, okay.
But it is a mess over there.
Okay, thank you.
A mess over there, yes.
Thank you. Excuse me. Hi.
Yeah, I work at a bank in New York, and I was in the basement. And the only impact we had there is when the building fell off. When the top fell off of one of the towers.
How far are you from the? Where are you from?
Like 2 blocks away, the bank in New York.
What happened when it fell?
When it fell, the girls were screaming, everybody was crying, and it was like helter-skelter because we felt the vibration, and that's when they asked everybody to evacuate the building.
Okay. So. And you're just coming off the bridge right now?
Yeah, and it's still got like a mile to go before I get home.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you.
You got it.
All right, and I'm here with
Jason Sims.
You're coming from the World Trade Center area?
Yes, the area.
Could you tell me what you saw there?
I got off the train about 9 o'clock. Building 1 was already on fire, I believe it is, and I made it to my office. By the time I turned around and looked out the window, they said the second building had collapsed, and the smoke just kind of covered the whole area.
Where were you working? Where were you working then?
I work on 99 Wall Street.
Oh, okay. And you were on Wall Street.
Yeah.
And you could you see from over there? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, you can't really see much of anything because the smoke and fog is so thick. Like the debris is just can't see anything. A lot of people running around. Nobody really could tell. You see people like trying to feel their way out of the clouds or whatever. Yeah, it's crazy.
So, did you see the plane run into the building, or explosion?
I saw the first building on fire, and the second explosion I actually saw on the news because they were actually filming it on CNBC as we were trying to figure out what was going on, and they showed the second plane actually hit the building.
Oh, okay. But you said you saw the first one out the window?
No, I saw as I got off the train, I saw the building actually on fire. I didn't see the collision itself.
Oh, okay.
I pretty much caught all the aftermath.
Oh, okay. And how are you? I mean, how are you? I mean, you're okay?
No, yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine, absolutely. We were a good distance away. They were pretty good about clearing out the building.
Was there a lot? Was there a lot of smoke that?
Yeah, actually, absolutely.
Do you feel any effects of it or anything? You do.
He does more than I do.
Do you want to share about your experience?
Not really. I'm not good on the mic.
No, it's okay. Just you're talking to me.
Yeah.
This mic is here.
Okay. What do you want to know?
No, you tell me your name.
Eric.
And what you said your friend here was saying that you were experiencing a lot of smoke.
Yeah. Into my lungs. The lungs are hurting right now.
How long? Where were you when it was happening?
In the building. In the building.
You were in the World Trade Center?
No. In 99 Wall.
Oh, okay.
Thank God.
Okay. So as you were leaving the area, a lot of smoke affected you, or where did you inhale a lot?
Leaving the area.
Do you have asthma?
No.
Oh.
No. Thank God.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, take care of yourself.
All right.
Thank you very much. Hi, Joyce Jones here with
Christine Wiley.
And you're coming from the World Trade Center area?
Yes, I am.
You want to
There's
share?
no more World Trade Center anymore. I watched both buildings collapse.
Where were you?
I was in my building at work, from looking out of a
Where
window.
Was that?
199 Church Street.
How far is that from
That's like maybe a mile away. It's enough that the building shook.
Okay.
And I was coming out of the train station this morning, and people were running and screaming and crying, and I didn't know what was happening. I just saw they said that a plane had gone through the World Trade Center. I could barely get to my office building. Once I got to the office building, when I saw the building started to collapse, I left. But it was horrible. People said they saw people flying out of windows. When the second explosion came, people were flying out of windows. There was fire everywhere, and it just looked like paper mache.
woman there. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Excuse me, miss. Miss, I'm sorry. I know you probably want to get going, but I'm noticing that you have a lot of debris on you. Do you want to talk about your experience for?
I was in the Equitable building.
And where was that?
That's 120 Broadway. That's about a block away from the World Trade Center. The first explosion went off right when I was going into work, and I still went in. The second explosion, we were all standing outside looking at the fire. And that's when the plane just went and rammed into the side, and everyone just panicked. So they told us to stay inside, and then for about 5 minutes afterwards, they evacuated us. As they were evacuating us, when everyone was standing on the corners of 120 Broadway, that's when the building collapsed, and all the debris fell down, and everything just turned black. I mean, you could not see anything. People were, it felt like a stampede because everyone was trying to get out of there, and there was, I mean, nowhere you could go. You couldn't see where you were going or anything.
There was a woman I was just talking to. She said she saw people coming out of the building.
I saw, counted about 8 people jump out of, the building above the fire.
How are you? I mean,
I'm fine. I thought I was very scared, very scared. I thought I was going to get stepped on, and I couldn't breathe. I mean, I have all this stuff on me.
Right.
All of this.
All over white, grayish, plaster-looking debris in your hair and on your shirt. And how far are you from home now? Right now we're walking away from the bridge, from Hillary. Yeah. And
I've walked here, I just want to get back to home, that's all.
Right, well, thank you very much. You want to give your name, if you?
Desiree Escalante.
All right, thank you very much. Take care of yourself.
Mom's house.
Did you all come on? Okay. Your name is?
I have to give my real name.
You can just start talking. Whatever you're comfortable.
We were on the 82nd. We were on the 81st floor. All of a sudden, the plane hit the 82nd floor. The building started crumbling right before our eyes. It took us an hour to get out of the building. As soon as we got out, I got out about 5 minutes later. The building came down on all kinds of things.
You were on the 82nd floor of the World Trade Center. 81st floor of the
World Trade Center. Yes.
Oh my.
As soon as we got out there, I would say about 5 minutes after that, the building started coming down on all kinds of rescue vehicles, fire engines, ambulances, everybody that was in there. They got hit, cops. And I jetted into a radio store. When I came out, you couldn't see a foot in front of your face. It was all black outside.
Oh, my gosh.
Catastrophe. All the firemen that were coming up as we were coming down, they were all stuck up there. People were jumping out of the buildings. There was body parts everywhere.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. In the surrounding area?
In the surrounding area. The fountain around by World Trade Center, all over. The building came down on all the buildings around it.
So how are you? Did you inhale a lot of smoke?
Yes, it was terrible coming down.
Did they have like oxygen for you or something?
No, they had nothing. And when we got down to about the 10th, 11th floor, the water started pouring down. It was knocking people right down the steps. People were flooded all the way down the steps.
Where was the water coming from?
The firemen that went up there to put out the fires, they were using the fire hoses, and the water just started coming down the stairs like somebody opened a big, huge, giant swimming pool.
And you were all taking the stairway from the 81st floor down to the...
It took us approximately 1 hour to get out from the 81st floor. And as soon as we got out, the building came down.
Oh, my gosh. Well, thank you very much. You take care of yourself. How far are you going from here?
I got to walk to Staten Island.
Oh, my God. Is there any there is no they didn't give you any sort of information of how to get home or whatever? They
nothing.
Just said...
All they said, as soon as we got out, all they said was that they were expecting 2 or 3 more bombings and to get out of the area.
They bombed the Pentagon, everything.
Yeah,
Washington.
I heard about that. Yeah, I heard about
everything is bombed. Another building just fell.
Is your cell phone working?
Yeah, well, somebody just called, so he's not calling out.
It's hard to get outside lines, actually.
Everything is messed up.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you. Take care of yourself.
Oh, my God.
Excuse me, do you want to talk to WBAI Radio in Exile? Oh, sorry. Thank you. Excuse me, do you want to tell about your experience at WBAI Radio in Exile? Would you like to tell about your experience at WBAI Radio in Exile? Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. Are you coming from the World Trade Center area? Would you like to tell your experience?
No, it was just horrible.
No, understood. Excuse me. Would you like to tell your experience for WBAI Radio in Exile?
Did I what?
Would you like to tell your experience? Were you at the World Trade Center?
No, I was not.
Oh, okay. That's fine. Hi, it's Joyce Jones here with
Michael Santana.
And you just left the World Trade Center area?
Yes, I did.
Where were you?
Close by One New York Plaza.
It's like I'm picking hair and somebody's hair.
That's okay. It's around One New York, One Liberty Plaza.
Oh, okay. And which is very close for anyone who isn't in the New York area.
Right.
Did you see anything? What did you see?
Actually, I didn't see the first crash, but we did hear it, and we came downstairs out of the building to look to see what was going on.
You took the stairs?
Actually, we took the elevator at that point going down.
Okay.
So it was just an accident initially. So we went downstairs to take a look to see what was going on, and then we could see the flames and the smoke coming out. And at that point, you could see the other plane coming in for the second building and hitting the second World Trade Center.
Did you see what the plane looked like?
It was huge. It was big. I mean, it wasn't a small aircraft. It was a big craft. At first, you looked at it, but we didn't pay attention because we didn't think. Who thinks it's going to crash into the World Trade Center? But it was flying pretty low, and then when it crashed, everybody started running and screaming, and people were crying, and it was just kind of crazy.
Was this the green plane that I've heard about?
Honest with you, I couldn't say. I didn't look that close.
Yeah.
I mean, when I saw someone pointed up to the other plane, it was like seconds before it hit into the building. So. It's really a tragedy. I'm really shook up. I've never experienced anything like this in my entire life. And the smoke and the fumes and the dust clouds that were coming, you couldn't breathe, you couldn't see a distance in front of you.
So you're just coming off of the Brooklyn Bridge, right?
No, we tried the Brooklyn Bridge, but they closed it off. There's the Manhattan Bridge. They rerouted everybody to the Manhattan Bridge. In order to get people out of Manhattan.
So people just had everyone walk over to the Manhattan Bridge and then walk over.
And then walk over here into Brooklyn. And unfortunately, what I've been told, there's no trains, Long Island Railroad, or even the subway system coming. A lot of us thought there'd be a Long Island Railroad if we came into Brooklyn as opposed to Manhattan, but they're being told it's not at this point either. So I really don't know what I'm going to do as far as getting home.
So how far do you have? Where do you have to go from here?
Oh, well, I live on Long Island. So I don't know what's going to happen at this point.
Queens, and apparently it's difficult just getting to Queens.
Exactly, it is. I don't know if I'll take a cab to Queens, and then maybe from there take a bus or something home. But at this point, it's difficult.
Wow. Well, thank you very much for.
Thank you.
Take care of yourself. There are lots of people out here. They're checking, trying to see if their cells are working. There's a couple of uniformed people out here. I'm sorry, who are you affiliated with? I'm sorry? NYPD. Oh, NYPD. What branch are you? You're a recruit. Oh my gosh, this is your training. Oh, okay. Well, no, I know we can't talk. I just wanted to figure out the uniform. Thank you. We've got police recruits out here. This is their training. I guess everybody's being utilized. Excuse me, sir. I'm talking to WBAI Radio in Exile, and I noticed you have recruits out here. Is this standard? Or is like everybody being utilized, and that you need recruits?
Terrible tragedy, and we're trying to use all personnel.
Oh, okay. And they're qualified to be out here.
I hope so, ma'am. I can't talk right now. I'm busy directing traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. You hope so. Okay. Hope that they're qualified. That's all right. There apparently seem to be buses going to Long Island. If they go to the Long Island Railroad. Excuse me. I was just talking to someone who was going to Long Island. How are those people being told about the trains going to Long Island? Because he didn't know where he was going to go.
Very difficult because of a lot of people don't have cell phones that are working and stuff like that.
Right.
But the railroad is working down there. I don't know for how long. That's the problem.
Oh, okay. So did I overhear you say something about buses going?
Buses, nothing on Island.
Oh, okay.
There's buses being set up down here in Sands Avenue next to the Brooklyn Navy Yard. They'll be sent to various areas of Queens and out of Brooklyn. You're just going to have to go there and wait to see what bus they tell you is going where.
But from right here, as people are coming off the Manhattan Bridge, how are they going to know this? They just have to ask you.
Unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, it's like they don't have signs or anything to let people know that this is this is the case, that this, that they can take these alternate routes in order to get back home. But apparently it exists.
Going in.
Good luck. There's a guy on a bike here. Oh, he's going to pick up his kid. You want to talk to WBAI-in?
I'm going to get my boy. They call me. He's downtown in school, and
where downtown is
down the village in the west, east side. So I don't think I have any trouble getting in there.
Good luck.
Oh my God! Thank you.
All right. There's a guy on his bike. He's got a little helmet for his kitty. He's going to try to go pick him up.
You think the bridge is open?
No, it doesn't seem to be. I don't know. I don't know. Did you ask one of the officers around here?
No. I'm going to try it anyway.
Yeah. Is it open? Is the bridge open? It's shut down? Okay. Excuse me. It's closed. You can't get on the Manhattan Bridge, this lady's saying. Thank you. Wow, there are like so many people coming off of this bridge. There are folks who have like plaster all over them, white plaster, grayish plaster, coming from the area. Excuse me, did you work in the area? Would you like to talk to WBIX radio? WBAI? Are you okay though? Are you okay though? Okay. Hi. You're looking. You got something to say.
Yeah, I have a funny question to ask. I don't believe something happened.
Wait, hold on. We got a person here. Well, we got a person here who's attempting. We've got a couple of people who are going to attempt to go across the bridge. I guess I'll go to the bridge and see if we can actually get across the bridge. Might as well.
I work over at 195 Broadway, and I came out and saw the first building was hit. We thought it was a bomb.
How far is that from the World Trade Center? Just
right
for people
across,
who don't live in New York.
Right across the street. World Trade is on Church. I was right across the street, and we thought it was a bomb in the first building, and we came out, and then I saw the second plane go into the second building. And
what did it look like? What was the plane?
It was coming at an angle, swerving, and it looked like it went right through the building.
Was it like a big passenger?
It was a big passenger plane, like a 727, and almost sliced right through the building. Looked like it went almost throughout the other side, and then people were jumping out of the first building.
Did the plane explode?
No, it didn't happen. There was no explosion.
The plane just kept going?
It looked like it went right through. I never saw a plane in either building.
Never bleeding. You have on your
Did
you fall?
Here.
There was a second plane.
According to, I happened to be a block away.
Okay.
And maybe 8 minutes to 9, I got out, and everybody's looking up.
And that's when the plane.
So I was at 120 Broadway, and I was about to go. I went into 120, and I heard an explosion. Everybody said, "Run, run, run!"
It was a hijacked airline.
Yeah. What was the first one?
Well, I heard it was a small twin-engine plane. I heard it was the first plane. I think they're waiting for
Were you over there as well?
I was at 55 Water Street.
And how far is that from
It's about a 5-minute walk. I'm down right by Battery Park.
Oh, okay. And so
it was a stampede through 120 Broadway. They're scaffolding, and I met a guy at 120 a little while ago, and I thought he was at the Trade Center. He was so covered with debris. But he said he's lucky because the street got all dark, so he was able to. But you really couldn't. Everybody just ran toward the water.
You couldn't even see to walk away from the building. It was just. It was like raining debris coming out of the building.
How did you get that mark on your under your elbow? It says a little sort of like a quarter inch or something.
It was like a stampede. I climbed over a concrete wall to get onto the building.
People lost shoes. There was one lady with one.
Yeah, I climbed over the wall to get onto the bridge. When we were over by the water, you could still hear planes, and another plane sounded like it hit another building on. I think it was on Market or something. I don't even know.
Yeah, cell phones are a problem right now.
Yeah.
I noticed your friend here calling on his cell phone. Getting through on a cell phone is really a problem right now.
Yeah.
And it has been. You've not had a problem? I guess it depends on who you're, what service you're using.
Apparently, French reception is in the World Trade Center.
Okay.
I've been down since the first plane.
Yeah. Okay. Actually, I understand that there are a lot of television stations as well.
Right. I heard
that are exactly because their transmitters are in the World Trade Center. Channel right, but Channel 2
Winds was the only one I heard on the radios that people were getting AM.
88 is
right.
CBS.
And you got the Empire State Building has the other transmitter.
Right, and so that's fine. That's why other people are able to hear.
Let's hope there's no other planes coming for that.
As he was getting closer, he's getting faster with that plane. He kept picking up. I was watching. He's picking up little by little. You see, the engine was hitting harder and harder and harder.
You actually saw the plane?
Literally hit. It went right there. The plane was right there next to me. It came over.
We're not far. We're looking at this building.
Yeah, this high. It missed about 10 stories, and it just missed this one. It missed the second one, and then once he got by the second one,
and the wings didn't clip.
No, the guy in the building. It was like 2 feet off the building, and then when he got by the buildings, he took the short right, and he came right in, and then he took too much of a right, and he came left. And he came back again, and then he went straight, and then he pulled in. The last pull, and then he hit the engine. I heard the engine hit real hard, like he wanted to go faster. And
did you see the plane go through on the other side?
Yeah. No, I didn't see it. I saw it because there was a building here. He went on the other side.
Well, this woman said she saw a plane go through. That must have been the second plane.
Yeah, the second one was the 767. That was the big one. That was a big airline.
That
was huge.
Made the thing explode.
No, it was coming like 300 miles an hour.
Yeah.
It wasn't on the landing thing. It looked like it was picking up little by little. As it got closer, it just started hitting more. You kept hearing the engine accelerate more and more. Maybe because he was turning, it was sounding funny. Yeah. Because he was supposed to go sideways. But then he was just kept going back and forth like he was losing it. Wow. But the last one, he straightened it out, but then he pulled it. And then when he pulled it in, he drove straight through.
Oh, my goodness.
There was no way of getting away from that building. He could have cleared the building. Because when he came in, he cleared the 2 buildings. He could have came straight out across through the city.
Right.
Instead, he turned it back in, like deliberate. That's when I first seen it, I knew it was deliberate. Yeah. The way it looked deliberate. Because if he was staying out of control, he could have stayed out on the water. Oh, okay. And he could have just kept going the way he was going. And been all the way out to the George Washington Bridge in seconds. Once he put that turn in, it was all over.
Yeah, it just
it was intentional,
right? Yeah, it was intentional.
Yeah. The blow-up explosion was unbelievable.
So where were you going from here? I mean, where were you trying to get to? Are you in Long Island?
I was in New Jersey.
Okay.
I just wanted to get out of the city.
As a matter of fact, I just heard from one of the white shirts, and you'll have to ask them for more thorough information. They have like special buses going to Long Island. From here, there are Long Island trains going.
We're going to try to put it down at the end. Hillary?
Yeah, going toward down here.
Atlantic Avenue is where the railroad is.
Okay. All right. Ask the people in the white shirts. They will tell you. They don't have like big signs to let you know. This is for WBAI Radio in Exile. It's WBAX.org. It's online. And people who have phone lines that are working will be able to hear this later.
Not too many got it.
Hey. Thank you. Thank you for talking with us. Good luck getting home. Yeah, a couple of I'm attempting to walk across the bridge now. See if I can do this. See what happens. There were a couple of folks who were talking about dump bush. They're just, people are nervous about what could be decided, what could happen, upon Bush getting back to the White House and how he assesses this and when he starts talking to hunchos and what they decide to do. There was a woman who had some sort of mask under her face, but the way it was set up, it looked as though it was holding up her chin, so she's apparently okay. The woman who's walking with a napkin over her face. I don't know what's going on there. She can see, but maybe she's releasing, crying, processing. A lot of people aren't allowed to go over the bridge. They're able to come into Brooklyn, but they can't go into Manhattan. Excuse me. Did you just come from Manhattan?
Yes.
Would you like to talk to WBAI.org? WBAI Radio in Exile.
WBAI.
In Exile. What happened? Where were you?
I was actually in bike messenger training class.
Where was that?
Up in on 35th Street, and they interrupted the class to tell us that the World Trade Center was on fire, and they let us all see it. I don't know, and then everything was canceled, and I've just been riding through the streets, and it's crazy. Like, nobody's paying attention to traffic laws. Everybody's just walking and driving, and everybody's walking around with, like...
Watch out. There's a car trying to come by.
Everybody's walking around with just these dazed looks on their faces. Everybody has...
It's unmarked police car.
They look a lot like zombies or something. Like, everybody's just in shock. It's really crazy.
So by the time you got there, the explosion was done, and what was generally happening was debris all over the place and people trying to leave.
Yeah, everybody's trying to leave. It's really amazing to see everybody walking over the bridges, and like, it's a really horrible thing, but it's kind of nice to see everybody just walking and no cars and everything. It's like...
I'm talking to somebody on a bike with a basket with flower decorations on the basket. She has, or like one of the, transportation alternatives. She's got, what does she have? Future President on her T-shirt, Washington, D.C., Future President, that's what it is. It's like her lock was covering it. By the way, are you going to D.C. on the 29th?
Yeah, I'm totally going to D.C. Actually,
so you want to tell us about the 29th?
Yeah, I'm going to D.C. The action that I'm going to be doing is with a lot of Native peoples. I'll wait till the thing goes by.
We're waiting for the fire vehicle to go by. Not engine truck place, but sort of like the fire minivan. Anyway.
There's this wonderful action going on. A lot of people from Native tribes all over the U.S. are coming together, and they're not going to be on the front lines where all the tear gas and everything like that is, but they're going to be a little bit offset, and everybody's going to be doing action through prayer and meditation and energy.
Which date is this?
It's going to be going on all through the protest. I'm pretty sure. I don't have the exact details yet.
But this is the 29th of September.
Yeah. And people are going to be doing sweat lodges and native dances and singing and just sending that wonderful energy, that earth energy, into the protest to help out the protesters and affect the protest through that.
Well, what is your name?
My name is Jordan Resnick. Actually, but if you say anything, my name is Moonbug. That's like what I go by. That's my first name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So,
well, maybe I can get some information about you and then contact you later about the event.
Yeah.
All right, let me put this on pause, and I'll be with you later. I like your perspective.
Okay.
So you're saying on the...
So if you're watching the news right now, they're already giving all these reasons why this is happening. They're like, we really can't be letting people in from other countries. We need to have tighter borders. Borders are a big problem. And
did you know recently there was there was something that was just passed about Mexicans being able to have a sort of work exchange? It just happened just last week. There was sort of like a work exchange.
That's going to...
And now with this statement being said, how far are they going with this? But
I don't know what's going to come out of this, but like from hearing the reporters, they're just...
Yep, there's a cop caravan, minivan type of thing, 4-wheel drive vehicle. Okay.
They're already trying to say that our borders are too loose. We should have tighter borders. We need more police. We need like all this stuff, and it's just like, no, we don't have enough police already. Like when I got out on the streets after this happened, I never realized how many unmarked police cars there are. But everywhere, there's just tons of regular-looking cars that now had lights on them and sirens going down the street, and I was like, we're being watched all the time here, It's crazy,
Wow. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, as I was down here, you'll notice as you're getting off the bridge, there are recruits. There are recruits, police recruits out here.
No.
I'm asking the white shirt guy. We'll be listening to this. It's probably coming on before you, on this recording. But I asked the white shirt, who is sort of like the captain of police in New York, or he's in charge of things in the area. I asked him, well, I noticed you have recruits out here. Are they qualified to be out here? And he's like, we hope so. Hope so? Like this is how they're getting their training, or I don't know. It's a strange thing to me. And you're saying all of the cops are already out there.
Yeah.
Those cops should be out here.
Yeah, they're probably recruiting people. They probably have a police force out there that's just set to like recruit people. We need more police. Come on.
No, now that would really be PR for them. Well, thank you very much. I have let's see. Yeah. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, sure.
Moonbug.
Yeah,
I've been talking to Moonbug. Thanks, Moonbug. Peace. All right. I continue my trek to the point where I will be, I'm sure, told to return. You know, I can walk up to a certain point and they'll say, okay, now turn around. You can't go. I'm sorry? Oh, okay. You can't go into Manhattan.
Nobody's going across.
Okay. Thank you. I've just reached that point. There are some people who have to get their children and what have you.
At midnight. That's what they caught me when I was on my way up. And I couldn't go all the way back home because there's nothing going down. Is anybody come on supervisor? Go that way.
Actually, if you ask one of the white shirts, I was talking to him earlier, they have information about how to get to Queens and how to get to Long Island, and they need to tell you this. This is one of the recruits that we were talking about earlier. Manhattan, I think you're... I don't know. And she's not the one to ask.
They're evacuating, so people are coming this way, but nobody's going that way except for nurses.
Yeah, I want to evacuate
I'm
Brooklyn.
still at the hospital.
I got people doing 16-hour shifts with them. No, nobody's. I got people doing 16-hour shifts with them.
I don't think there's something.
Oh, man. There's a person here with a badge. He's trying to get over. He's waiting for the police captain to let him through.
Yeah, nobody's, no, subway, buses, pedestrians, nobody's doing it.
So the entire borough of Manhattan is closed.
Downtown, they're evacuating.
There was a man who was here on a bike. He was said he was going to pick up his kid. Did you see him? Would he have been allowed to go through?
No, nobody. No, people picking up kids. I mean, 2-year-olds. There's a man with a handicapped wife.
You're going to waste your time.
Okay. Thank you. Oh, we have reached the end. Some people are trying to take another exit. Someone was trying to take the lower level to go back. You know, they're all recruits that are up here at the bridge. No, you know,
Please turn back.
they're all recruits. There's one standing here. I guess he's really ready for his uniform. Will serve New York City's finest well, I guess. I'll probably be reading about him in a couple of years. But anyway, this is where it starts, at the recruits level.
Go back that way.
Signing off for now. I will be back. Even press is being turned back.
Nobody can go.
Why don't you tell me what your family's in Europe?
Yes.
Have you spoken to them today?
Yes.
And what are they hearing about this?
They saw everything in the TV. When I called them, my son turned off on the television right away to the international channel, and they saw both accidents in the Pentagon and in the World Trade Center. And he saw the crash when the airplane went to the building.
And you're in Hungary?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I am from Hungary and my family lives in Hungary. So they saw everything in the international channel in the TV.
My mother called me from Argentina. She saw everything for Argentina also.
They have an international channel there as well, or it's just on regular Argentinian television?
No, regular television from Argentina. Everybody knows that for all the world, for around the world.
And everybody was just wondering, and they can't believe this, that happened. I thought it's just a movie when I woke up this morning, and I heard everything about this. And I can't believe this happened in my life, and this is the real life. I can't believe that.
Well, thank you. Thank you for telling
You're
me.
welcome.
Well, I know they were saying that...
Look at the black.
Yeah, there's the smoke. You can see the smoke from where we're standing on the Manhattan Bridge here.
And you know what I'm saying? This is my second birthday.
Oh!
Because I wasn't there.
Today's your birthday?
No.
Oh!
No, it looks. Because I had to be to Manhattan today, a little bit later. If it's happening a little bit later... Maybe I'm there, and I'm not alive now. You know?
I don't know. I live in Broadway.
Thank God.
I have to go to my home because I tried to go. I don't know how. I don't know what I have to do now.
Yeah, this woman is trying to get to Manhattan because she lives in Manhattan, and the police aren't letting people go into Manhattan through the Manhattan Bridge. I understand the Brooklyn Bridge is closed as well, but I suggest that you talk to the officers in the white shirts because we pay our taxes so they can tell us, help us get home.
What I will do, I walk a little bit more. Because you know what I have to do here?
can do anything.
Yeah, but like I said, you know, they have actually police recruits.
Yeah.
They just got out of the academy who are out there telling people to turn around.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what you're going to run into. And when you come down here,
what happened with the people who live in Manhattan?
well, that's what. Hopefully, you can find out from the folks in the police in the white shirts.
Yeah. Okay.
And you know, and when I saw the movies in Hungary, you know, the big scary movies, I couldn't believe that happened in a real life.
Like
I thought it's just about the Godzilla or that kind of movies, you know, or the Big Burn. I don't know the
Independence Day or something,
or like that. Yeah, Independence Day. That kind of movies, you know. And I thought it's just imagine, you know. And I never think it's gonna happen. I can't believe it ever can be real. You know. So I'm so surprised, and I can't believe even.
Oh no,
you know,
Oklahoma City, remember that.
Yes, well, I'm glad you're okay, and I'm glad you were able to share with your folks that you were okay as well.
Okay.
All right. Good luck getting home.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Excuse me. Are you trying to go across the bridge? They are not letting people go across that bridge. They're going to attempt to get across the bridge, but there are police recruits who are telling people to turn around. They're not letting people get on the bridge. I suggest you ask the captain. That was closed. That was closed last I heard. I suggest you talk to the white shirts. Find out. People can come in from the bridge, but they can't go over the bridge. They're not letting people come over the bridge. Good luck. But talk to the police in the white shirts, because they have like all this information. Besides, we pay them our taxes. Get that information from them. All right. I think I'm going to ask a policeman in a white shirt, because they're not on the bridge where the people are attempting to get across the bridge. They're allowing people to walk across. Now the bomb squad is going. There's a big van.
A tracer fire. He has reported the fire burning there in Kabul, the seat of Afghanistan's power, the seat of the Taliban government. Again, we are watching their picture coming to us on the video phone, and it is very hard, of course, to see exactly what you're looking at. But you are looking at Kabul. Again, you see some tracer fire there coming across the scene. Nick Robertson, can you hear us?
We're being told, Joey, I can hear you if you can hear me. Certainly, big detonation there, missiles flying across the city. We're being told from sources in Kandahar, that's the spiritual capital of Afghanistan, 300 miles south of here, that there is no rocket activity like this south of here in Kandahar. Certainly in Kabul, very, very active at this stage. Multiple detonations. It is nighttime here. It is dark. It is difficult to get an accurate fix on exactly what we're seeing and exactly what we're hearing. Certainly the sound, what appears to be the sound of large missiles incoming and landing in the city. Certainly a big fire on the horizon of the city at the moment. And certainly anti-aircraft fire coming up from the city, and rockets being launched and flying across the horizon of the city. Rockets perhaps going at the speed of several hundred miles an hour, the sort of speed that one might expect to see cruise missiles traveling across the horizon at, burning with a white glow coming from their tails rather than a yellow glow. The fire on the horizon that we can see from here burning furiously now. Perhaps it would be accurate at this stage to suspect that there was a fuel dump that's been hit by the way that it's burning, flames leaping, and that fuel dump must be perhaps 5 to 8 miles from where I am. Flames leaping up from that fuel dump now, leaping up right into the air. It was a low-burning fire before, but it has now really increased in its ferocity, perhaps indicating that it is a fuel dump. Looking across the rest of the city, that fuel dump, perhaps the only big fire we can see at this time. From our vantage point here at the Kabul Intercontinental Hotel that overlooks the whole of the city of Kabul, that is in a basin surrounded by mountains, the whole city is laid out in front of us. The gunfire that was coming up from the city seems to have subsided for now. We're not hearing any more detonations at this moment. And as I say, the fire on the horizon really burning furiously at this time, flames leaping way up in the air this moment. Joey?
Nick, if you can talk to us a little bit about your circumstance. It is 6 o'clock in the evening here in Atlanta. It must be quite late at night there in Kabul.
Indeed, 2:30 in the morning here, Joey. We're 8.5 hours ahead of East Coast time in the United States. And it was about 5 hours ago that the foreign minister of Afghanistan, Wakil Ahmed Mutawakil, briefed journalists. I hear more detonations going off now. He said that the Taliban had not taken precautions against the possibility of there being an air attack against Afghanistan. He said because it was not necessary. The Taliban spiritual leader, Mullah Omar, had also made a statement saying that they felt Osama bin Laden wasn't responsible for what had happened in the United States. He said his country was a peaceful country. He wanted it to be at peace, and he wanted peace in other countries around the world. Certainly what we're seeing in Kabul these early hours of this Wednesday morning is very far from peace. Certainly multiple explosions happening in and around the city. There is a front line about 50 miles north of the city where the Taliban are fighting a battle against the Northern Alliance here. We could hear detonations coming from that northern area as well. But on the perimeter of the city, particularly in the direction of the Kabul airport, which is about 5 to 8 miles from where we are, detonations coming from there. I remember standing on this balcony about 4 years ago watching fighter jets bomb that airport as part of Afghanistan's ongoing civil war. The flash at the airport to us hearing the detonation of the hotel is about the same duration, so I am using that as an estimate to gauge that those missiles again are falling in the area of the airport. First we're seeing the flash, and then we hear the detonation come several seconds afterwards, and they appear to be coming from that airport area, in some cases several miles away from us. There are still a lot of flashing we can see in the air reflected off clouds. That could be thunder and lightning. However, there's a possibility that those reflections are missiles landing elsewhere, the flashes as they explode and reflecting off the clouds. But it's not a good indication. We certainly don't hear any detonations coming from that particular direction at this time. The anti-aircraft fire that we were seeing a little while ago is not coming up from the city. The city, apart from the detonations we were hearing a few minutes ago, appears very, very calm. The visibility here is excellent. We can see all the way across the city. It lies on a plain that's surrounded by the mountains here in Kabul. We have high mountains to the right. These mountains were used by the Mujahideen as vantage points for shelling the city several years ago during the Mujahideen infighting in Kabul. The last 5 years, the Taliban have been in control of this city, have been trying to extend their control over and across Afghanistan. And the Foreign Minister this evening telling journalists and CNN that he didn't believe that Afghanistan would be attacked. He said if Afghanistan was attacked, then they would call it, the Taliban would call it an act of state-sponsored terrorism, Joey.
All right, that is CNN's Nick Robertson. Again, please keep the line open to us. Nick Robertson there in Kabul, Afghanistan. For our viewers who are watching this with us on the air, again, we're getting this from video phone technology. You're seeing this exclusively on CNN. It is a very new technology, and so you could tell from the audio line it is not as clear as our typical TV feed, and the visuals obviously are not as clear, but you are looking at the city of Kabul in Afghanistan. This is the seat of the Taliban government. They're not a spiritual center, but it's a government center. In any case, you are seeing in just about the last 10 minutes, we have been hearing these reports from CNN correspondent.